You have to understand, you're talking about 350 years back, there is no such thing as distillers. I mean, there's no brands, there's no bottling, there's nothing there. People doing fermenting and distilling and drinking, and what's left selling it. So this is it. Like, it was not a business, it was just continuum of life. The family has been in business for a long time. Man in charge, master distiller, was charged with taking care of the family business and at the same time training the next successor. By the time I was 18, they gave up on me. They couldn't teach me anymore anything else. So that was it. I took over the control of it. And I was there for 3 years before I left for the new world. I was brought up with the old classic concept of European, I use the word winemaking. In other words, it was really fermenting fruits.
So you're doing wild fermentation.
It was wild fermentation. Nowadays, literal, the word sentence calls a winemaker. Now we are making wine.
I was going to school at Western studying art. Then I met Miles and changed to psychology, which helped a great deal.
You fell in love.
Yes, well, it was love and everything. We were making wine and we were making brandy. And we would also take a sample of the brandy to tastings. And people would say, oh, I used to drink brandy, I don't drink brandy anymore. So he combined some of his brandy, he made it into a liqueur, and he combined it with a dry barrel fermented Chardonnay, blended them. What you got was, it smelled like brandy, but it had the body of a Chardonnay. It was just liquid gold. And so people loved it. And then we had to look at each other and say, what do we call it? Do we give them the whole thing or not?
I shortened it.
Okay. We came up with the name Char for Chardonnay and Bay for brandy.
I grew up around huge wineries, small wineries, distilleries. When Mom and Dad started this, I was here when Dad was installing it with a forklift, and through high school, learning and making wines, making brandies with Dad and Mom, and it was great. Yeah, I started selling it too. I liked selling things. It's kind of fun.
Weren't you selling candy in high school?
No, that
Grade
was
school?
That was elementary.
Elementary school. I was not selling candy. I wasn't selling rock candy in high school, honey. Yeah.
He's a born salesman, is my point.
Yeah. I loved it. I liked the production side. I liked the sales side.
It wasn't like he was invited to work. It was just expected.
Yeah. I was 18, 19. You know, my first job in the distillery was in the still. And I remember sitting on a bucket and cleaning the inside of the still overhead like this, and it felt like forever.
That's why you got these big, strong arms.
That's right. It's a family business, and family business is not for everybody, and it's not easy. Nothing is, but you know, working with your parents is special.
Marco came into the bar. I was sitting there, and you know, I was very young and having a good time, and he kept like trying to talk to me, and I kept getting nervous. So I would just, you know, if someone else I knew came in, I would just run off and talk to them. And he goes, "Hey, you got a second?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he goes, "I like you. I want to hang out." And he's like, "Do you have my number?" And I was like, "Yeah." And at this time, I didn't even have a cell phone. You know, this is like a long time ago. And he's like, you have my number? And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Use it." And kind of like peaced out. And I was like, oh, did he just kind of tell me what to do? Because I kind of liked it. And then finally I got the nerve up to call him, and he goes, "What are you doing right now? Do you want to meet up for lunch?" And I was like, "Yeah." And so he's gonna get us some Mexican food, and he was like, what would you like? And I'm like, "A vegetarian burrito," because I knew he wasn't vegetarian. And he goes, "What's that?" So he ordered his first vegetarian burrito that day.
Yeah, that was the first.
And we met in the park, and we got into a heated discussion about something we read in the paper, but it was like, you know, cool, like healthy discussion. And he had to go to work, and I had to go to work, and he kissed me on the cheek on the way out, and that was it for me. I was smitten. And then we dated for 2 years before I started working at Charbay. 7 years from when we started dating to when we got married. Yeah. He wanted to be sure.
I got my distributor's license, so I was selling up and down the state. I had a list of accounts. I gave the list of accounts to Jenny when she had a couple of days off, and I said, "Can you help me and stop by and, this is what they order, and see how much they want, and take some orders." She turned into California sales manager, and then about 3 weeks later, national sales manager for all the different states.
Yeah.
So it seemed like that, Dad and I were making it, and Jenny was flying around selling it. We were off to the races.
Marco and Jenny just developed this team where they were so good with hospitality. They would do the events, and it wasn't long before people would meet Miles and me and say, "Oh, I met the owner of Charbay." And I said, "You did?" And they'd say, "Yeah, a young guy and this redhead." And that was good. That was going the path we wanted. On the early days of distilling.
We were always on the front end. This distillery is number 177
In the U.S.
US. Now is 2,200 or something like that, so you can see what's happened in the passage of time. This is art form, there is no question. Science and chemical engineering are just tools.
I think we make things that we like. Yeah. Every cut I do, I'm making that for me. I'm not thinking about, I'm hoping that someone else is gonna really like this. No, every cut, I like it.
From the basic point of the raw material from which the distillation is done, there are 4 classes. First one is the brandy, which is distilled fruit. The second class is a whiskeys, grain distillates. Third class is a grass called cane, so cane sugars, so then it becomes rum. And the newest one, about 200 years old or something like that, is agave, it's a tequila. Tequila, 100% agave tequila has to be distilled and bottled in Mexico. The point is, I personally distill all 4 classes by myself under the same label, available on the market at the same time. So that's basically bringing me out to the concept of really a grand master. Again, nobody has ever done that. But there was a old little cabin, which was falling apart and stuff on. So I think, if I remember right, we kind of start buttoning up the cabin first. And then we'll become so cocky that we are such great carpenters. I said, well, hell, if we're going to do that, let's build a winery. Yeah. And that's exactly what's happening. I mean, we built a winery. We had some friends helping us and we do it, but fundamentally, 1/4 of the winery was built. Marco and I built it, literally.
We've got a tiny little still there, an alembic pot still, about 50 times smaller than this one. And we use that to make brandy to fortify our fortified wines. It's great. It's just super small up there. It's on top of Spring Mountain. You're in a Doug fir pine forest. It's pretty amazing. It's its own little microclimate right there.
We call it the still on the hill.
We make 10 barrels of wine a year, just enough to make a mess, and it's great.
But it's the quality in the steps, the European blended with the California. That's really been what Charbay was about.
There's no shortcuts. Everything is done the real deal way. There are no shortcuts, and so they're not trying to be super efficient. They're trying to make it awesome.
Yeah.
Again, it's not a business. It's an exercise of the things what we do, and we ferment and distill. Make money on by doing something which you do it and sell it and have people enjoy it. Only the ones who see the point. The rest of the stuff could care less.
That's why Marco's in the front and Miles is in the back.
Well, we make more than we can drink, so we got to sell some of it.